Now, BHP Billiton's first half profit dipped 7% as iron ore, copper and coal prices fell. The world's biggest miner has warned that markets will remain volatile due to Europe's wars and stuttering global growth. Attributable profit before exceptionals fell to $9.94 billion from $10.7 billion a year ago, roughly in line with an average forecast of $10 billion. Let's begin on the desk. $10 billion is still $10 billion, particularly when you look at the fact that we are looking here at 6 months earnings. Any disappointments for you in this first set of numbers?
No, not really. I think it's just a continued trend, and I mean these are profit levels that are at historic highs for the company. So you've got, you know, they actually provide a great reconciliation in their release that they give to the market.
Right.
And it tells you that actually earnings before interest was still higher than the corresponding period last year. So they said that basically increase in volumes had resulted in a decline of earnings before tax of about 480 million.
Right.
And then the increase in sales prices, which is obviously the rise in commodity prices, accounted for a 2.7 billion increase in the figure. So
yeah,
once you've taken account of decreasing volumes and increasing commodity prices, you come to an earnings before tax figure that's actually higher than the corresponding period last year.
Absolutely.
But I mean, Godfrey, it's a big number. If you think about that in rands, the company's making 80 billion rand roughly profit for a half year. So 150 billion rand a year in profits. It's quite impressive.
And this despite the fact that we're talking about a company that's battling higher costs, and this is a company also where output was down during the year, during the first half, because of various difficulties in their operations.
Yes, and again, this comes back to you know, we'll talk about the technicals with Warrick, but obviously the big question that analysts had about 2 years ago was, how's BHP going to be able to grow meaningfully from this size?
Right.
It's already a gigantic company, and we've seen that answer's been alluded to with the acquisitions they've made in shale gas, which ironically have been at a time when natural gas prices are at historic lows.
Yeah.
But you need to understand that the strategy of the company is not played over 3 to 5 years. This company is used to investing in projects that last 10, 20, 30 years.
This is long term.
Absolutely, and they've identified that as well, petroleum and gas as a major way in which to expand. It's still a very big market for them to play in.
Yeah, Warrick, let me come to you. At the layman's term, well, almost layman, I'm looking at a dividend yield of 2.64%. Not particularly exciting. I'm looking at a price to earnings ratio of 8.94, and I'm thinking $10 billion and the prospects that we're talking about and the ability of these guys to generate earnings. Does that show on your charts the same way?
Look, I think the Billiton took a bit of a beating when the US dollar got strong, went down to 1.26. But now we've seen that retracement back up to 1.32. And in that instance, what we've seen, and we've chatted about it before, is this action on the technical chart over here, where you've got almost what would be called it's a very complicated double bottom. But you've got
it does look a bit crowded.
Very much so, yeah, it's very crowded in there. Hell of a sandwich, actually. And then you go down to over there, you have a bounce over there, we've bounced around, came back down to test that support there, and then we bounced off again, which was quite nice. And then where we stopped was not too far from the previous resistance, whereas more or less where our neckline is at 270.
Yeah.
And if you add the two together, the bottom to the top, you're looking at, what's that, about 60 bucks. 60 rand to the upside.
That's where she should be.
Well, looking from this line here, going up 330 roughly.
Right.
Probably within a 3 to 6 month sort of period. Maybe pushing 9. It does depend again on the dollar. But at the prices of the euro dollar at the moment, I think BHP Billiton is going to seriously benefit from that.
Absolutely. So looking at those figures from where you are now, that stock looks undemanding.
I think so. What I really like about it in the short term, what we've seen is you're making higher lows, which is excellent. Okay, that's very bullish. Sure. But we also have what we like to call a 4 moving average over here. They're all converging over there. And obviously, that's broken out and run. So from there, what we've seen is a bit of a higher high in the chart itself, in the price chart, but a lower high in the MACD. And that was telling us that there was going to be a bit of a pullback.
Right.
Okay, and generally a chance to get in at a bit of a discount. All right. So that's what we've been waiting for, because if you miss that, which was roughly from about, I think, 250 to 275. It's quite a chunk of profit there that you to try and get in over there now. You're now sitting in a bit of pain.
Absolutely.
So the idea is rather to let it pull back to around about 255, thereabouts, and then look at getting in again.
Yeah, Warren, is that a view that you share, considering the issue that we've seen around China? The suggestion has been that we may see hard landing in China. That hasn't materialized. Now people are beginning to suggest that China will be all right. And I suppose when you buy BHP, you're buying China essentially.
Yes, you are buying China, and more importantly, you're buying a big exposure to iron ore. So I think a good question perhaps to ask Warrick is
sure.
Two things around the iron ore and BHP's relationship with iron ore. Is obviously, as far as I can recall, it accounts for about 70% of their operating profits.
Right.
And two things have happened. Obviously, they're still in the process of expanding their operations in Western Australia, which will top out at 220 million tonnes per annum.
Right.
And the second thing is we've seen the iron ore price moderate over the last few months as the slowdown in China has been anticipated. So I'd like to maybe ask Warrick if, I don't know if you've looked at the price for iron ore, but specifically, there's a lot of concern that iron ore maybe has been at very high historical levels, and it's now due to moderate somewhat with the slowdown in the Chinese economy, which is very infrastructure driven. And iron ore prices are very, very closely linked to that. So just in terms of the iron ore with regards to BHP, I mean, this sort of, what would you call it, hesitancy in the technicals, I would interpret as being related to the decline in iron ore prices.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you've seen there that might have led to this period where it's moderated a bit, the share price is sort of sticking a little bit lower?
Yeah, look, obviously in technical terms, we've, in a double bottom, you're going to have a neckline, and there is going to be a battle at that neckline. It's a natural resistance level, so we've hit it there once. That created the double. That actually finished off almost a small double bottom, if you want to look at it like that, taking us to that level over there. But that formed the greater double bottom.
Right.
And every time it hits that level, it's going to challenge that level. Now, we broke out and did a bit of a false break, and then it pulled back in. Now, generally speaking, what happens is after this convergence does take place, the moving averages like that, we see a massive rally. I mean, we're looking at about anywhere between 5 and 10%.
Right.
And it's a high probability position for us on a technical basis. But you do expect to have a pullback after that, because the traders watching this are all waiting for the same thing.
Right.
And that position is a good place to ease out of the position. Okay. And naturally, then what happens is that the share then does retrace. It gives back to the market because the guys are taking profit. I would look at the worst case scenario here. I'd look at around 250,
right.
Giving back to the market a little bit, and then as I say, still pick up from there if you can.
So Warrick, for you, BHP, hot or not?
I think we're hot.
It's burning. The calls are in.
I think, I'm very interested to see how the slowdown in China goes. So I'm short term, I'm very cautious, but obviously this is a fantastic company, and I think long term it should be an investor's portfolio.
Is that hot or not?
Not hot at the moment.
Not hot at the moment. Okay, so we've got a nay and a yay.